Hey guys, thank you for joining us. Another episode of the new Scoreboards podcast, which really started with me, kind of my struggles and challenges and opportunities for making the transition from athletics to business. And I'm joined by a special guest, Bobby Isola, Executive Managing Director at JLL. That's Jones Lang LaSalle, a big-time national and really worldwide commercial real estate firm. And we're going to get into his story. And all things accordingly. So Bobby, thanks for joining me, man.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, we've been trying to do this for a couple weeks, man. We got
little sick.
Yeah, we got kids in the same daycare class, all the same germs flying around.
Little ear infection, some sinus infection action. So
yeah,
glad to be feeling better.
Par for the course, man. With kids and kind of a small world. How we met, you know, both our kids go to school together. Next thing you know, we have a cake birthday party, and I start talking to Bobby, and I'm like, man, this is we get into the fact that you played sports at a high level, and you're transitioning your career, and I'm like, hey man, like got this podcast, like maybe we could talk.
I just met him, and he creepily asked me on the show, so he twisted my arm, and I love talking about myself, so I'm glad to be here.
Yeah. Right. Me and you both, man. Yeah. So like fast forward, you're from Orlando.
Yep.
Went to Bishop Moore, local high school. I was doing a little research, right? Eventually transitioned to wrestling. Played a couple sports, football.
Yeah.
How'd you focus on wrestling, man? Because down here in Florida, I don't feel like that's as popular as, say, maybe in the Midwest or something.
Yeah, it's not. So my family, so they've been here since like the mid-'50s. Okay. So earlier family to the Central Florida area, moved down from New York to Miami, then up to Orlando. Basically, my family got into wrestling through my grandfather signing up my uncle for a summer camp. My uncle decided not to go, and my grandfather said, hey, listen, we paid for it. Bob, to my father, you're going. So he shipped him up to, I think it was Virginia or somewhere, and put him in a wrestling camp, and that's how our family got into wrestling. So my father did very well, two-time state champ for Bishop Moore. So he grew up here, two-time state champ for Bishop Moore, and then went on to, he signed a scholarship with Alabama.
Okay.
And then Title IX dropped their program. He then was in a transfer portal and ended up finishing his career out at Clemson.
Okay.
Yeah.
So ended up in the ACC.
ACC as well. So, and actually his last match was, kind of fast forward when I get here, but I went to NC State, and his last match was against our heavyweight of his career, was against the NC State heavyweight. So it's kind of full circle when I decided to go to NC State. So
first of all, I was doing a little research, and I saw that, and your dad's name's Bob.
Yeah.
Right. So
I'm Bob Jr.
Yep. So there's clearly kind of a family heritage that both in wrestling through Bishop Moore, kind of following and then ending up in the ACC wrestling.
Yeah.
But the heavyweight division in wrestling, and I saw that last match for your dad. That the opponent was like a monster, right?
Yeah. So Tab Thacker was, I think it was Tab Thacker. So he was the NC State heavyweight. So back in the day, it used to be unlimited was heavyweight.
Right.
So it wasn't, when I wrestled, it was all, the heaviest you could be during weigh-ins was 285 on the nose, right? Or anything under that.
Okay.
So he was wrestling unlimited. So some of his competitors were like 400 pounds.
That's what I saw, which is insane to think.
They're monsters.
Yeah.
They're monsters. So
that's like sumo wrestling stuff.
You would think like pure athleticism would beat them out, right? And a lot of times so with speed, but sometimes these guys just get so big that they just lay on you and they wear you out that way.
Yeah.
So, but anyways, I came from a wrestling background through that. Excelled in football as well, and had numerous offers to go that way. But I was always a very self-driven individual. So for me, when it was time to choose, hey, I could have gone and played division football or wrestled at numerous schools, but when it was time to decide, kind of wrestling had my heart, and that was where I kind of enjoyed, was driving myself and pushing myself. So, and that's probably what's led to, why I'm in commercial real estate today, is just being able to, determine my own success.
Sure. So, it's more that internal independence where it's not that you don't value team sports, but you seriously have some sort of self-awareness to go, hey, I kind of like at least having the autonomy and operating in my own space.
Yeah. And I would say so I love football and I love my teammates, and I don't think there's a better sport that offers that kind of camaraderie, right? Wrestling's different, and it's I liken it to brokerage in the sense of like you're in charge of your deals in brokerage, right? Your individual deals that lead to your teams and your company's overall success, right? Wrestling is like you're in control of your match and your outcomes there, which leads to your team's success throughout the year. Right?
Yeah.
So that was, I think that's kind of where my, where I've been attracted to, that kind of like
It almost seems similar to like college golf, where you're playing as an individual, but you're also affecting how your team ends up finishing.
And listen, let's not kid ourselves. It's a lot of it, to win and lose by yourself. It's kind of a lonely road. So like, having a team around you is very nice too.
So you get to NC State, you make the decision that, hey, wrestling's it.
Yep.
Let's do it all in.
Yep.
So fast forward.
NC State was a decision where Tom O'Brien was the coach at the time, and there was the option there to play both, wrestle and play football.
Was it offensive line I saw?
It was offensive and defensive, just depending on the school. Whoever was recruiting me was recruiting me for a different, position. So, but it was either offensive tackle or D end. So, some guy, football also was one of those things where the coaches, they come in, they'd size you up during recruiting visits, and they're like, we see you getting to 330, and like I'm like, oh my God, I was 260 at the time, and my senior year or junior year, and I was like, I want to get married one day and have a normal life and be able to sleep and not have issues, and so. That was also a little bit concerning to see how heavy they were gonna like load me up with weight.
You're like 70 pounds, and you're like, I'm feeling like I'm at a pretty good pace right now.
Yeah. So so NC State was giving me the opportunity to basically do potentially both, and I liked having that flexibility. I went up to a visit at Lehigh as well, which is a powerhouse wrestling school.
Okay.
Lehigh was built on the side of a mountain, so I got up there being a flatlander from Florida and was like, we did a couple workouts and sat in there, and I was like, oh my gosh, this is, my legs are exhausted. I could imagine trekking through the snow in Pennsylvania after practice or after class, and basically, having tired legs trying to get back and forth and sliding down the mountain. I'm like, no way.
Yeah.
So NC State, landed at NC State, and it was a great decision. So
yeah.
Came out the gate my freshman year, started, won the starting spot there, had a good freshman year, and that was, I think I tied our all-time freshman winning record for heavyweights or whatever my freshman year, and so did well, and then was kind of ready, charged up to come back into the sophomore year season, but I remember getting out there for the first time, and you come. Bishop Moore, I won states my junior year, and then senior year I lost it. I bumped up to heavyweight, and I will give my dad a quick side note. He reminds me all the time that he's the only 2-time state champ in our family.
Yeah.
So I won it my junior year at 215, and lost it at heavyweight. I placed second. So, but I was wrestling at 200 pounds against 275 pound guys. So it's just a little bit different.
Wow, so you won a state championship.
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed that in my prep, man. That's impressive.
Yeah, so it was good. So, but you go. Point being is you get to your freshman year, and I remember one of our first tournaments was the Cliff Keen Invitational out in Las Vegas. It's one of the biggest kickoff tournaments for Division I programs. And you get out there, and some of the best guys in the country are there, and you're wrestling. Sometimes 5th-year seniors that are there. And I remember
men.
Yeah, man. And I remember I'm like, man, like I got the guy from Navy, like get out there, tie up. He grabs me, and I'm like, holy crap, what was that? What just grabbed me? And it was just this it was like a beast. And like 2 seconds, the match was over. I was like, it was the quickest like humbling experience of my life. I'm like, I'm not so hot anymore.
Yeah.
So, anyways, that was my freshman year, and then jumped into getting ready to go for sophomore year.
Yeah. So you essentially have a successful freshman year.
Yep.
You earn a starting spot. You're parlaying out of a phenomenal, kind of an all-time, really wrestling career out of high school.
Yep.
Win a state championship's incredible, especially in a sport like that.
I went something like, I think it was like 50 or 60 matches without a loss, and then my last one was a loss.
So like you're trending as like the guy, right?
Yeah.
Clearly highly touted, the chance to play both sports.
Yeah.
Life's going well.
Yep.
And then and then you fast forward a little bit more and you hit a skid of some challenge, right? And we talked about this a little bit offline, but if you feel comfortable sharing kind of what that journey over the next couple of years look like.
Yeah. So I got to my, and kind of like rewind real quick, is just, throughout, like when I got into, I think it was like 7th or 8th grade, hitting puberty, we started noticing that I was having, I have 2 different forms of epilepsy. So I've got absence seizures, and then I've got grand mal seizures. And so I'd always had those kind of throughout high school, and they were always there. We knew about it.
Managed it.
They were managed it. They were good to go. And then my sophomore year season started off, had a good preseason, ready to go, training. I want to say it was around November. I had out of the blue, I had my first grand mal seizure, and it was kind of crazy. One day it was just, I was always a guy that was always early for practice, whatever it was, and then didn't show up to practice. And the next thing I noticed, I woke up and I was like, where am I? I was at my room, thank God, somewhere safe, and everyone was looking for me. And
so you're by yourself.
I was by myself, and then drove to the practice
scary.
facility because I was freaking out because I knew the coaches were going to chew my ass out, basically.
Isn't that funny you're still thinking
Yeah, I was still thinking about that.
Yeah.
I'm like, I got to get to practice. So I get to practice, and they could tell something had happened, and took me to the hospital and whatnot. And that kind of led into, I flew back home, went through some testing down here, actually down the street with my doctor that I had previously seen. Was gone for probably 2 weeks from school, went through that testing, and then flew back up. And actually, this goes back to hard driving parents. I literally competed. It probably wasn't even 2 weeks. It was probably a week after. I was literally competing at a tournament at Chapel Hill. It was like Virginia Tech, Virginia, and UNC. And I did fine. It was just more of, I was still feeling a little out of it.
Yeah.
And I think any neurologist would probably say is like, after you have something, what the heck are you doing, man? Yeah. So got back on the mat. It was okay. They put me on some medication. And then in December, through finals, whatever was going on at the time, I had another one. And when you have them, you are kind of, some of them can be like they can be 2 seconds long. You never even notice that they happen. Other times they can be kind of debilitating for a number of months while you're trying to you can't retain a lot of information, all that kind of stuff. And obviously being at school and doing all this traveling for athletics and, slamming your head against another guy's head during the matches and all that kind of stuff, it makes it very difficult to kind of do things day in, day out. So we made the decision, like my parents, myself, coaches, everybody, that I would drop out for a semester and finish out the spring semester back home. I took some classes just here locally at one of the colleges and just continued to train. But the goal was my health is obviously more important than anything here. Let's get me back to an environment where things are familiar, bring it back home, and then, see if I can come back after, And
at that point, you got to be thinking,
I may be done. Yeah,
right?
I
would be
done.
thinking, hey, look, you take a semester off of something you've been doing for the last however many years, you just know that this could be it. Yeah,
it could be the end, and it brings into a lot of things in perspective, because at that point I was like, I'm there, and I'm like, I was doing well, all of high school was all about athletics, right? I mean, academics were important, but that was my life, right? And at that point I was like, man, like wrestling, I've got this for my entire future. So it was also like a very awakening period for me mentally to say, okay, like, hey, if I go down, like I need to have a backup. And all of a sudden school became very important very quick.
Yeah.
So just kind of focused in on that, but I got back here, I trained, I had a bunch of great partners and coaches from over throughout high school. And I used to train with all the UCF guys. So they have a men's club program, like it's like through NCWA or whatever. They have a smaller program, but they compete on a national level. And I would go over there, train with them, and work out with some of the guys here locally. Some guys at the Jungle, Seth Petrozelli, all those guys that he was the guy that knocked out Kimbo Slice.
Yeah, what did he go by? The something Silverback?
Yeah.
I've worked out at that gym before, not doing what you do, but
so I just needed bodies that were athletic to like kind of just roll around with. I don't need to be choked out, but it was just something to do during while I was here, and so I could kind of go back to school. And the cool part was once we got everything figured out, I got a call from a coach prior to the fall semester coming back up, and he was like, "Hey, listen, we want to have you. We want you to be back. You're a leader for the team. We want you to come back no matter what, even if you don't want to wrestle ever again. Wow. Like, we're going to honor your scholarship, and we want you back." So, and everyone thinks full rides are great. You get 4 years of paid for school, but like every year you are re-honored. Like, they re-honor that or they take it away.
100%.
So it's not a given that it's happening every year. So the fact that they were committing to me made me feel like, hey, they wanted me a part of the program, and no matter what, given other qualities outside of just athleticism, right? It was humbling, but the competitor in me was like, I want to get back on the mat.
Yeah.
It was getting back to school was probably the hardest thing in my life. It was just, at that point, it was just, I had never, you're getting adjusted to new medications, and these medications, obviously they're messing with the chemicals in your brain, right? Yeah. So one day you're feeling better than others. Other days you feel like crap, and you're puking at practices. You're, all practice long. You're doing all this kind of stuff and trying to compete at a high level and go to school and be away from family and friends that you've known forever. So it was a very emotional time, to say the least. So I struggled with that for the number of years there. And then got my senior year. They had, obviously, NC State needed to make a decision on what they were going to do with their heavyweight future while I was gone for 6 months, whether or not I was coming back. So they needed a slot to fill. They recruited a guy, Elhim Palma, and the guy's just a freak out of high school, man. Just a big Samoan guy, just strong. I've never, I got back and he tied up with me. I was like, who is this human? Like, this isn't a human, He grabbed me and I'm like, oh my God, right? Yeah. Great individual, and great teammate. Loved practicing with him, and the two of us we just battled it out every day, and we had a great time. My senior year, as we're approaching ACC championships, we had a chance to do a wrestle off for the starting position going to ACCs, and
the guy,
the guy that's been competing, and I hadn't won my spot back yet. So I came in, I've been training my butt off, learned how to wrestle his style a little bit better, and finally was at the point where I was getting the edge. We're wrestling, I'm beating him in the wrestle off. He jumps on my back, I pop my ankle, and literally just was like ankle sprain that was so severe that I wasn't even able to walk.
God, that makes my ankle.
Yeah. I mean, I suffered from ankle injuries along the way, but like nothing to this level. You got a 280-pound guy laying on your ankle, jumping on your ankle, and you're trying to push off, and it just popped right out. So, unfortunately, I could not wrestle the next week. So he took the position, and that was the end of the career. So, it was great. And I'll back up a little bit, because as I was going through all the challenges of, throwing up during practice, getting used to, you're not feeling good every day and still trying to push through it. Mm-hmm. My dad, I think it's something that's carried through, and I told you a little bit about this when we were out at the kid's birthday party. But, my dad came up to me and he flew up one day, and I'm like, Dad, I'm done. I can't do it anymore. I'm just pushing, too hard. And his comment stuck with me, and I don't think I really appreciated it until, now being an adult, having my own family and all that kind of stuff, and going through, the real world, challenges of life. He was just like, listen, he's like, if you let, a lot of times people just get completely consumed, and obviously there are issues, and illnesses that people suffer from where it's hard to not get consumed by it. Mm-hmm. But, he had the wherewithal and parenting skills to tell me, hey, listen, like, if you let this thing define you, you're like, this is what's going to define you your entire life. You're like, whether, and it may not be, epilepsy or whatever it may be that is holding you back. It could be something, but you start to use that as a crutch and another thing as a crutch going forward in life. And it's easier for you to turn to excuses for why you're not finishing something. And, it resonated with me. So he's like, I don't care if you ever win again or wrestle a match again. And it never happened due to another injury, but he's like, I want you to finish it out. And no matter how much pain you're in, no matter how how hard it is, you got to finish it out.
Damn.
So it was a, at 21 or whatever it was, not, 20, it was are you kidding me kind of conversation. But, now at 34, I look back at that as probably like one of the most defining conversations Dad and I had. So,
wow. What a unexpected gift to like look back on that with the perspective.
Yeah.
Because I'm sure at the time, like you're like, you kidding me? I have every excuse. I've done this much. I've worked this hard. And what's crazy is like you're setting up for this magical comeback for you even to be competing for, call it a starting job after everything you went through is unbelievable in itself. And then to know that, obviously it was routed by an ankle injury that was unexpected, had to be deflating again to say, hey, man, I'm coming back for this comeback. I put in all this work. And then we talked about even the normal stuff, like you're talking about just not feeling well, your brain's just not firing like it used to, retaining information. Yeah. It's just so much uncertainty. Like, right, to me, it was like this, your college career was like this pretty certain, hey, I'm going to be a star wrestler, and then boom, all of a sudden there's this massive unknown of like what this looks like for me.
Well, yeah, and they put you on medication, and there's obviously side effects to the medication, right? And so you go from all of a sudden being, you know what it's like competing on a high level. You go from all of a sudden trying to eat the right things, get proper rest, do all these things the right way, and then they worry about you taking supplements to perform better. I'm taking a supplement that's like basically hindering my performance, downgrading myself, and you can feel it on a daily basis. Even where I've had times where I've not taken medication, even in today's world, I try not to, but if you miss a dose, I can tell you the energy I feel from not being on it, because it kind of subdues everything a little bit. The energy I feel from it, from not being on the medication, it's like wow, this is like this is how the rest of the world gets to live. Yeah. So, but anyway, it was great, but it's a great learning lesson.
Thanks for sharing, man. I also do want to focus on a point, because I think like having this conversation with people, there's like this moment like where it's not going to be forever, right? Yeah. Some of that comes from, hey, for me, it's like I knew, okay, I'm not going to make the NBA. All right, I'm going to have other folks, so I'm going to honor this experience. For you, it was like that semester that you took off. To know, hey, wow, the rest of my career is in jeopardy. Like, what is next? So, fast forward, and the relationship you have with your father and the context that you shared is incredible. I mean, like, what a gift. I was reading in some prep, like the quote he shared with you in high school about, if you want to be the best, you got to do more than the rest. Just like it seemed like this narrative that wrestling gave you guys this platform to what would serve as later in life these teachings of like that conversation you had about, hey, if you let this define you, like just super cool.
Relationships always, like, he's just been always very involved in that sense, and the guidance along the way. He was very methodical, because I look at parents today, and like I want my kids to be great at sports as well, because I remember how great it was, but you see people just, I think, pushing kids way too hard, way too young into stuff. And, I look at my dad's, I didn't really start wrestling until middle school. Right. But once I got into it, he's like, hey, if you really want to excel at this, you got to invest your time. Yeah. And you got to invest more time than anybody else. And, it wasn't that I was, sub, competition level than anybody else at the time, but he didn't push it super young, so I hated where I would hate it, where I was burnt out. Right, a lot of kids experience burnout, so he just kept on kind of saying, "Hey, listen, I want you to do it. Let's try this tournament out this weekend." And then if I fought him on it, he's like, "Don't worry about it. Don't worry about it." And but once I got going, it was okay. Now you need to make a decision. If we're going to pursue this, like just like anything in life, you got to go 150, 200%. Yeah. And if you want to win. So.
And again, that comes back to if you want to win. Yeah. Right? Like you can participate. Yeah. And do less, right? Yep. But if you say you want to be great, or you say you want these things, and that transitions to business, it's the same muscle, right? If whatever you define as success, the bigger the goal, or the harder the path, the more willing and the more effort that's got to be put into, maybe the longer time that it takes to get there. So I think that equation is important for everyone to make, is like, be careful, like to say what you want, right?
Yeah.
Because what it takes to get that, and you obviously learn that through sport. But so then how you make the jump? How do you get out of school?
So
what happens next?
I did really well my last, as I started after the illness and performance wise, I was like, okay, I need to focus on school, get to graduate, right? I picked my major, as a quick side note, like I picked my major to tell you how obsessed I was with just my athletics. I was a communications major, and
so calm.
Yeah, I like remember, but like I remember my my academic advisor calling me in. And in order to be to stay NCAA eligible, you have to be a certain degree complete by and declared by your sophomore year, so like entering your sophomore year or whatever. So they called me in. They're like, "Hey, you're ineligible right now."
You're like, "What do you mean? I have
good
grades."
I'm like, "What the hell are you talking about?" Like, and I'm like, "I have decent grades. They weren't great, but I have decent grades, and I'm competing. What do you mean I'm ineligible? And I haven't done anything illegal." So they're like, "Yeah, you need to declare a major." I'm like, "Okay, well, what's my route here?" And they're like, well, I'm like, what do I have? What do I have the most credits in? They're like, communications. I'm like, communications. That's what I said. That's what I'm graduating with. So I went that route and had I was like, I like talking to people, so let's just go ahead and do this.
Look at you now. You're on a podcast.
Yeah, exactly. I'm on a podcast.
But the reason I'm laughing is because that was the most common major on the basketball team.
Yeah.
And it was like no one really knew what it meant, right? It was just like communications, Yeah. And I actually experienced something similar. I chose business at first. And then there was this math class that I kept withdrawing from. Yeah. And I had like a 3.0 plus, but then all of a sudden the advisor was like, hey, you're threatened to be eligible because you haven't made enough progress towards your major. So I actually had to switch majors, and I did the same thing in a different way. I was like, well, what credit, like what can I shift to that it wouldn't be ineligible? And they were like, Health Services Administration. I'm like, perfect. That's what I'll do. So that's what I have my degree in.
Yeah. So
that's why I'm laughing so hard. Nothing against communication.
Yeah. Nothing.
Majors.
It was great. I like talking to people, and if I learned some, I had some like nonverbal communication classes. Sure. I mean, I'm not going to get into it, but there were, some of it was a little bit of a waste. But I'm glad I got out. Glad I got my degree. And
so how'd you get into real estate?
So I focused on just getting good grades, and then I was like, all right. My junior year and going into my senior year, that summer, I just called my dad up and I was like, hey, listen, wrestling's not going to be here forever.
Sure.
It's not going to pay the bills.
You called him. He didn't call you?
Yeah, I called him. And I'm like,
that's impressive. My dad called me.
Yeah. I'm like, I need to like, life was coming quick. And I was like, my family's in real estate here. My dad's a commercial mortgage broker. And he's had his own company for probably now it's 30 something years, but at the time it was 20 something years. And I was like, hey, and then he's also developed property for the family and whatnot for my mom and him over the years. And I was like, hey, you've been in real estate. A lot of the people that we know, your clients, friends, whatever it is, they've, I think had decent lives for their families, and had, I've had great opportunities throughout my life because of that industry. So, I think I'd like to go in that. I'm like, do you have anybody I can talk to? And so at the time, he introduced me. He's like, he was listing one of our buildings, a family building, to sell or lease with my now partners, Matt and Wilson. And he's like, these guys are great guys. You got a young Wilson at the time was like super young, and he's like, he's really, really sharp. Matt's a good local guy. Matt's a Bishop Moore grad as well. Matt actually wrestled for Bishop Moore back in the day as well. And he's like, go try to intern with them. I know they may be looking for somebody, and it's all data entry stuff, everything you're just doing as an intern. They tell you to mop the floor, you'll do it, right? Yeah. So I interviewed with them, or met them for lunch one day, and they're like, yeah, when you want to start? And like, I'm like, I'll be home and whatever. And my dad told them, he's like, listen, he's like, he can come work with you guys for the summer as an intern. It was like unpaid, or maybe I think they gave me $700 for the entire summer. Yeah. So big it was money. Like, not big money by any stretch. He's like, the rule is though, he's like, Bob's got to be done by, I think it was like 2:00, so he can go work out. So it's like, because I was still getting ready to go back for my senior year.
Okay.
So I had to make sure that I was ready to go back. So they're like, yeah, Bob's going to be back, done. He's got practice in the afternoon. I had it in the morning before and then in the afternoon. And he's like, Bob's got to be done by 2:00. And they're like, all right. Wilson played football at Davidson. Okay. And then, Matt understood the competitive nature of it all and what I was going for. So they're like,
knew it wouldn't be forever.
Yeah. So they're like, yeah, that's fine. So I got all my stuff done. And that's really where I got introduced to the two of them. went back to school. So I had a good internship. It was great. I didn't, I don't think by any stretch I didn't, blow any people's minds. I was just kind of along for the ride to see if I liked the industry. And went back to school. And then I just was like, hey, I'm going to stay in touch with these guys. At that point, I hadn't really talked to anybody else. I was looking at banks and, did I want to become a banker? And everybody was like, I go to these, and banking at that time was like still kind of like a
retail banking.
Yeah, retail banking was like kind of like a good job, I guess, and it still is. It's just I was not. That was just like what the world was telling me to go do.
You weren't like fired up about it.
No, God, no. I had no idea, and I interviewed with Chase, and I thought I was, being the athletic personality and probably an ego at the time, I was like, I'm better than anybody walking in off the street, whatever, being that I'm a communications major and all that kind of stuff. So I was like, man, I got this, no problem. Didn't get the job with Chase, and it was probably the best thing that ever happened. But I kept following up with Matt and Wilson throughout my senior year. And I think what they latched on to was like, hey, in real estate or just like anything in sales, right? Follow up and persistence, and it goes back to wrestling, is key to success, right? And I kept following up with them, and they called me. I think it was like maybe in like December or January, going into the spring semester, and they're like, "Hey, listen, you got a job when you're ready, when you're done, when you graduate." And so I graduated in the summer of the following year, and they're like, "Hey, you're ready to start?" I mean, I was making college degree, great athletic career, all that kind of stuff.
Wasn't what you thought it was going to be, huh?
I think my first 2 years, I made $22,000, and I was like, I was living at mom and dad's house. Yeah. I was saving every penny. I didn't have any student loan debt, thank God, because of athletics, and super appreciative of that. And didn't have any card. I had a '94 Jeep that I was driving that was paid off. So I was like, all right, like I'm gonna just try to store as much money away in the bank as I can at the time. And just started putting in the hours. And it was that as soon as the wrestling switched off, that same mentality, though, switched back on for, okay, if I didn't know anything about real estate other than, hey, dad did great and some people around me did great, but if I'm going to do this, I got to dive, I'm going to dive head first into this thing and try to become a champion at it. So
that's amazing insight. So, because you just wonder, so much energy to put into everything you just referenced about even the adversity, but all those years of wrestling, and then all of a sudden you go, okay, that's no longer the game, right? That's no longer the game. This is the new game, right? This commercial real estate, I have a good enough opportunity. I'm seeing the light, and I very much relate. I mean, I got out of school, and we started the business, and I moved in with my parents for, I think, 3 years. I made, I don't know, $8,000 my first year, 14 my next year. And then I think I got to 24,000 my third year, and I thought I was rich. Yeah. and finally got to get out of the house 5 years later, whatever it was. And but I was very similar in that way where I was like, okay, but there's this unique opportunity of like, I'm grateful for not having, having a place to stay, and being in a vehicle. So how long did it take? Because you guys eventually, did you start? So I saw you did 2 years.
It was just shy of so I out of college I joined Colliers International. That's where we were at before, and it was like a great platform for me to be on. Starting out, and they're a great company still to this day. I have a lot of buddies and friends there still to this day that we do work with day in day out. So started there. We were there for just shy of 3 years.
Okay. But that was your entryway.
That was my entryway. And I was there. Gig. I made like 22 grand or whatever it was, 23 grand those first 2 years. And then by the end of that, getting to that third year, I started hitting, I think I made 40 grand, right?
And you felt rich.
And I felt rich. I was like, holy crap, man. Like, this is never going to end. Like, this is great.
The Jeep's paid off.
Yeah, Jeep's paid off. Like, I got so much cash. But it was like such a huge difference. And it wasn't, I think it was I want to say I went to, my wife and I, so Monica and I were engaged. And then when we were kind of having conversations at the time about leaving Colliers to potentially start our own thing. And I was still young. I mean, I was 24 at the time, and, we're engaged. And so then went another year, and then basically 2 weeks before we got married, Monica and I are talking. I'm like, hey, by the way, like we finalized it. We're leaving Colliers and we decided to start up our own firm. So we're on like a week after we got back from our honeymoon, we started up Site Partners. And Site Partners, was a play on like, the word site for related to real estate, right? So, but we were, but it was site spelled with a C. So it was stood for commitment, integrity, team, and excellence, right? And we wanted to build a company around those values, those core values. And we started off with the four of us. We left, and at the time, I was young. I had no business starting a company with these guys. Didn't know anything about it, but I knew I was like, hey, these are good mentors. I can learn from them. It's a good opportunity at a young age to have ownership in something, right? So I kind of took everything we had in savings, and I was like, my partners at the time, I was like, hey, listen, I can stay with a big firm. Should I do that, or should I take the risk and go do this new thing?
Yeah, because you're just at a point where you're probably going to start making some. If you stay where you
some
are,
headway at a bigger
firm,
firm.
You're going to start making some money.
Yeah, and it was
pretty certain what your track's going to be.
Correct. And I was just like, you know what? I got good mentors. I think we're all going to be successful. If I'm going to take the risk, I'm going to take it now. And that was the play. And we again dove headfirst into this thing. Yeah. And I remember we opened up. There was four of us. And we had just enough money to pay for our rent, and our marketing coordinator, Heather, who's been with us forever, we had just enough to pay her salary as well. Yeah. And, we were just trying to figure out how to make it work. We were lucky enough to bring a bunch of clients with us, but I remember being at the office until like 8:30 at night, cold calling people when people are at home, probably eating dinner with their families and don't want to be bothered. But I was, that sense of drive is – the closest thing I can compare to it is like going back to athletics. It's like when you're starting off and you're just in this building phase when you have like, there's no other way than up. Right. So you're just training and you're putting in the hours because like you can't be any worse than you are right now. So let's keep trying to build this thing. And over time, through cold calling and all the relationship building and all that kind of stuff, we started gaining significant market share. It was a great place for us to be at, Monica and I, and we built something up, and we're a part of that. And we grew up, I think at the time, we had it for about 5 years, just shy of that. And we had about 25, 26 people at the time when we started getting approached by different groups to get acquired. And we did that for that 5-year period. And then JLL approached us, and JLL's, top 2 commercial real estate company in the world, right? So I think we have like 95,000 employees globally. Yeah. So just crazy powerhouse, right? Fortune 5, I don't know, we're probably a Fortune 100, but sure. Anyways, huge group. And they approached us, and it was a great opportunity for all of us, individually, collectively as a company. And then, obviously just personally for our families as well. It was a great move. So, we've been there now, which is crazy to think almost by December of this year, it'll be about 5 years. Yeah. And it's gone quick, but, it's been a good move, and yeah.
Wow. What a story, man. Yeah. It's amazing how much I felt like I knew the cliff notes of that story, but lacked the context of how it happened. Yeah. And so much of what I did, ironically, is so similar in a different way. But I just love the idea of you saying, which I relate to, is like, if I'm going to take the risk, I'm going to take it now. Yeah. Right. I have a good enough situation. I'm bet on myself. Because I know for me, I never really perceived myself as an entrepreneur, but I had a good enough counsel, good enough counsel from my dad that he kind of shared like, hey, like if you try at this and fail, like people will understand. Like you'll still have a story that you can parlay into whatever's next to you. Like,
and you got time to bounce back. And if anything, it probably provides you you've got that like empathy to be able to go talk to other business owners, because they've probably been in that situation themselves, where they failed once, failed twice, and maybe they hit it on their next try or whatever.
Yeah, but I just think I see you in the office at 8:30 making dials, and I think where it relates to athletics a little bit, like there's this commitment level to where you're like to delay gratification, like this ability to, whatever you want to call it, grinding, just showing up consistently, even when you're not feeling well, right? We've borrowed a lot from this conversation of like, I think you're such a good example of like the excuse of how many times you probably hit the mat in college that you felt well. Yeah. right? 100% was probably never.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And regardless of even the big struggle you've had, but any athlete, it's like you're at some level, the days that you're going to be 100% is like almost never.
Yeah.
And when you do, it's right. It's like recess, man. It's super fun. You're
it's great.
Jumping, you're running, but something usually is wrong.
Yeah.
And I think about in business where you jumped in, I feel like that's the case a lot. Most days are mundane and you're mastering these simple tasks. You're making the cold calls when you're not necessarily booking appointments yet.
Yep.
There's something to that you go, yeah, but I know this is what it takes and there's no other way. This is where we're going. So, man, that's exciting.
Yeah, that repetition, whether it's moves, whether it's taking shots, right? Like, I don't know a lot about basketball lingo, so sorry.
But usually like anyone that wants to be a good shooter, you're probably making 500 shots a day. Like that's what it took, right?
Yeah. If you so you've got to be able to put in that time, and if you're gonna like try to gain market share in the commercial real estate realm, you've got to be able to put in that time to learn the market, to drive the market, understand who the owners are, understand who the tenants are, like notice things that are out in the market where I would go drive. My days were spent, instead of getting up in the morning and lifting weights or going for a run or wrestling, my mornings were spent getting into the office, so I guess I would get into the office, cold call, right? Do some tasks, send out proposals, all that kind of stuff, get through the paperwork of the day in the morning, first thing. And in the afternoon, my days were, and still to this day, I do it, but in my afternoons, I would take, 2 or 3 hours and I would go drive certain submarkets of Central Florida, right? And I would look at tenants, write down notes like, hey, are they, coming into this parking lot, right? There's parking, there's, people parked everywhere, right? Yep. Maybe there's a tenant in this building that needs more space because they don't have enough parking right now and they're growing and they're exceeding their space requirement, right? And I take those notes, eat dinner, get home, eat dinner, go back to my database, plug all that information in. The next morning, that would set me up for my next calls, right? And then I would just keep that going.
How long did you keep that rhythm?
I mean, we still do it to some extent today, right? I mean, obviously, like, as you get busier and
But I love that because there's nothing sexy about that.
No, there's not. There's
this,
it's blocking. Like, and my partner Matt, like he's always said, he's like, what we do is not difficult, but doing it well. And I think it's like anything in life is like what we do, like but doing it well. That's where it becomes like difficult.
It's the simple, not easy.
Thing. And it's blocking and tackling. Yep. And it's just like anyone, like we're going. People want to talk 2023. Are we going into a recession? Are we in a recession? All that kind of stuff. You can like. Don't worry about the headlines. Like, I think it's, it's easier said than done, but like, I go back to being like, I'm on a team, right? But I'm individually in control of my own destiny. And I think I can either let the headlines freak me out or I can go back to my blocking and tackling, which was driving the markets, calling, trying to develop relationships, further develop my existing relationships and create new opportunities. So that's how you take uncertainty out of the mix, right? That's like in athletics. How do you take uncertainty out of the game or match, right? You practice more, you practice certain situations more. It's like golf or whatever. You take the shot, you practice the shots that you don't ever think you're going to get into. Yeah, and you take repetition, and it's the same thing in business. So if uncertainty comes, you're ready for it.
Well, and it's also like when I think about not how to not become a victim of your circumstance, right? Like if you want to relate it, like does the recession have to do with your income over the next 5 years, or does it have to do more with your inability to commit to a process and stick with it? Like, are you making the amount of calls that you know you need to make? Are you making the stops? Are you doing it every day? Like, I would venture to say...
The answer is right now, no. I need to be doing more.
But I'm not asking you, but I'm just saying in general, like when people look at a landscape, I think the recession is just an outside force that you go, okay, well, I can blame it on that. Yeah. If this doesn't go well, at least it's an out that this is a recession. Or, how about in athletics? I think about like, okay, like I have my process. I'm committed to being the best player. We get a new recruit who's a 5-star, 4-star point guard that's highly touted and going to get the nod. Does that mean that I stop? No. Or does that mean that I am committed to my process and I'm not going to let, that outside circumstance affect how I approach my work? And then hopefully over the next couple of years, a long enough time horizon, I feel like I can put myself in a position to compete. Yeah. I don't know. I relate that so directly because there's so many noises. It's so loud out there, right? In our business too, right? In the insurance space. So, man, congratulations on the success and you jumping in at such a young age. That's so rare. I feel like to be able to get that opportunity. And
and listen, like I have been, and like you, I mean, we've been blessed, right? Sure. So, I mean, obviously through hard work and our own efforts, but like, if I wasn't here, like thanking God for like the opportunities that I've been given, the fact that, hey, I could move back with my parents to give me a leg to save up money so that I could have some money to invest in this new company to do these things. Like, it's all God's plan, and having a back, a family to kind of rely on to support me along the way, was also one not only monetarily, that's having a place to stay, but also just there, like mentally, emotionally, and to have those guiding individuals in my life. So
no, that's incredible perspective, and I totally relate on that level of gratitude too. And I would ask you too to wrap up. I could sit here and do this all day, clearly. Yeah. But what would you say, like, right, going through all that, you got somebody that is maybe in that position or will be in that position. What would you say to your former self? Like, what are some vital lessons learned that if you look back, and you were talking to Bobby as an 18, 19, 20-year-old, whether he was going through some of that adversity or trying to figure out what you want to do next, like what would you kind of encourage that person?
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, you can push through, don't let, at the end of the day, I think like what I said before was, you can't let, and what my dad said to me, that's probably the biggest thing from a defining moment on how you can look at life, is you can either let adversities along the way, and it could be health related, it could be your business fails, it could be whatever, recession, whatever it may be. Like, you can let that define you, and that's what you dwell and spend your time thinking about is all your failure, or you can just use it as a part of your life. It's something that you live with. It's something that you've gone through, and it's just a part of who you are. And it's helped define it's helped shape who you are. It doesn't define who you are. Right. And then, going into work, for any young person that's kind of getting into, whether it's real estate, insurance, whatever it may be, find mentors that, you're not looking for, like, everyone today, a lot of young kids, they want this immediate gratification of dollars, right? And, I go back to like being blessed, having a family I could live with and all that kind of stuff. You don't need everything today, right? The delayed gratification, get with a mentor and a team that you can learn from and that you can grow from, because ultimately, like, it may take you making a couple of years of 20 grand a year, right? And it's not sexy, but, as soon as you look, that education is invaluable, and it will accelerate your career to a point that, at some days I'm like, wow, I can't believe I'm here. Right. And feel very blessed for that. But I think if you get too obsessed with having certain things early in life, you could be in that position to where you're, I've got buddies that I thought they were making a ton of money out of school. Right. And they're still in that same job, at that same income level. And it's not that money's like all is that important, right? And maybe they find fulfillment out of that. It's great for them. I know that as an athlete, I wanted to drive myself and push. And to me, it's, I think getting the mentor and learning from that is worth its weight in gold, even over, it's not to diss education, but, sometimes even over like MBA programs, all that kind of stuff, that early on you can get with these guys that have been doing it. You don't need case studies because you're living a case study every day, learning from them and transacting. So anyways,
that's such a great word, man. And it's funny that the podcast is named New Scoreboards. Yeah. And to me, like what you just said is very relevant to say the new scoreboard could be, should be, however you want to say it, the education and the skills that you'll learn along the way, right? The mentorship that you'll learn, because at the end of the day, over a long period of time, and that's where you want to talk about income, right? If you're learning all these skills and you're learning all these great habits and you're learning all this good education, and maybe you're not making the money yet, at some point it's going to go like this. Yeah. Because you're the compound. It's kind of like, money in the stock market, right? And it compounds over so many years. You give it a long enough time horizon, and then all of a sudden it's this ridiculous number that you're like, wow. And it's the same thing with, I think, with people's careers. If you can stick in the game long enough and you're doing the right things along the way, right? You can't just get in a career, not make the calls, not be in the arena, and expect things to compound in your, we have a saying internally that time either promotes or exposes you, right? So, but if there's a long enough time horizon, you have good habits, good philosophy, good mentorship, that's the pursuit. That's the scoreboard to me that's worth pursuing. That at the end of the day, you'll look up and you'll go, man, I don't know how I got here, but I'm grateful.
Yeah, and all those points, like I look at our deals, like I started off and I was just doing, like my first year, I was just getting exposure. And those points, every deal that I did, whether I dug it up or I just was assigned to work on it, every one of those was a point on my scoreboard to literally, hey, so, okay, I learned how to deal with this situation, right? I learned how to deal with this situation.
Yeah.
And now every time I'm faced with a new situation, I was like, oh, I've been there before.
Sure.
So like you go back to athletics, hey, like you practice that repetition, you put yourself in those situations so that when the situation arises, you know how to react in it. Right?
And you have the confidence to know, oh yeah, no, I've had a deal that something's come up that I figured out and it ended up being fine.
Yep.
Here's my process. I'm going to give somebody a call in the office. I'm going to talk to whatever it is, right? You start to build that confidence that when that first starts to happen, you go, uh-oh, the deal's falling through. I'm going to freak out. I'm emotionally a roller coaster. And then you do it enough times, just like in any situation in athletics, you mentioned hitting the golf shot. That's uncomfortable.
Yep. And I stink at golf.
Which we have no reason to talk about golf between you and I. So, no, man, that was incredible. Thank you for spending the time.
Hopefully I wasn't too all over the place, but I appreciate it, man.
I think you give great insight, and I borrowed. I can't wait to listen back. I know the listeners will get a lot from it, so cool. I appreciate you sharing your story, bro.
Anytime, man.
All right, man.
Appreciate it, brother.